So there I was, Commander Jake Rodriguez of the Terran Space Marines, standing in the middle of Harmony Station's diplomatic lounge, wondering how exactly my Tuesday had gone from routine patrol duty to what can only be described as the galaxy's most terrifying daycare situation. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a space station designed by committee where every species insisted on their own architectural preferences. The result? A maze of corridors that somehow manage to be both claustrophobic and sprawling, with gravity fields that shift every 50 meters and lighting that cycles through 17 different spectrums to accommodate everyone's visual needs. It's like a cosmic headache wrapped in chrome and good intentions. The emergency klaxons had been wailing for about 10 minutes now, which in space station time translates to mild inconvenience becoming serious problem. Something about a containment breach in the biolabs, though honestly, the automated announcements were in about 12 languages simultaneously, so I caught maybe every third word. What I did catch was this: all the diplomatic delegates needed to evacuate to the secure zones immediately, but they had a tiny problem. See, it turns out that when you're hosting the Galactic Peace Summit, a lot of important aliens bring their kids. And apparently, when faced with potential mortal danger, every single species in the known galaxy looks at the lone human present and thinks, oh perfect, there's our babysitter. Now I want you to understand something about my qualifications for childcare. I once killed a cactus. Not through neglect, I watered it too much, because I felt bad for it. My idea of meal preparation involves reading the microwave instructions out loud to make sure I don't mess up heating leftover pizza. The last time I was responsible for a living creature, it was a goldfish named Captain Bubbles, and let's just say his military career was tragically short. But here's the thing about humans that I was about to learn the hard way. Apparently, our reputation in the galaxy is somewhat different from what we think it is. Commander Rodriguez, said Ambassador Thexai, a 7-foot-tall mantis-like creature who could probably cut me in half with one casual gesture. She was gently nudging forward what I can only describe as a miniature T-Rex with anger management issues. This is my offspring, Razor. He's in his hunting phase, but I'm sure you'll manage beautifully. Before I could explain that I definitely would not manage beautifully, a gelatinous blob about the size of a basketball bounced up to me making excited squeaking noises. And this is my little Squeaks, announced Ambassador Voltar, whose own blob-like form was roughly the size of a small car. She's discovered phasing this week, so she might accidentally fall through the floor a few times. Nothing to worry about. Right. Nothing to worry about. Just a carnivorous dinosaur child, and a reality-defying gas creature. Totally normal Tuesday. The final addition to my impromptu childcare collection was Buttons, a crystalline entity that looked like someone had taught a chandelier to walk. Ambassador Quexmine, who resembled a larger version of her offspring, made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Buttons is working through advanced quantum mathematics for fun. If she starts reciting prime number sequences, just nod appreciatively. And then, in what I can only assume was a display of either supreme confidence or complete insanity, all three parents smiled at me. Well, performed the species-appropriate equivalent of smiling. And headed for the evacuation shuttles, leaving me standing there with 3 alien children who could probably level a city block between them. So, I said, looking down at my new charges, who wants to hear about Earth safety regulations? Razor responded by attempting to bite my boot. Squeaks phased halfway through the floor and got stuck, squeaking in distress. And Buttons started projecting holographic equations that I'm pretty sure were calculating the structural integrity of the station. This was going to be a long day. Now you might be wondering why 3 highly intelligent alien species just handed their children over to a guy whose greatest parenting achievement was keeping a fake plant alive for 6 months before realizing it was fake. Well, let me tell you about humanity's reputation in the galactic community, because apparently nobody thought to mention this during orientation. Picture this: you're a peaceful alien civilization, minding your own business, maybe evolving some nice tentacles or developing photosynthesis, when suddenly these bipedal maniacs show up from a death world called Earth. And I mean death world literally. Neither our planet is classified as a Class 12 hazardous environment by galactic standards. Most species consider anything above Class 3 to be uninhabitable. We live on a world where the weather actively tries to kill us, where our entertainment includes jumping out of perfectly good aircraft and wrestling apex predators for fun. We're the species that looked at fire and thought, I bet I can make this portable, then used it to cook our food and forge weapons. We domesticated wolves into lapdogs and somehow convinced big cats to live in our homes and knock things off our shelves. But here's the kicker, and this is where the galactic community really lost the plot. We're also the species that goes absolutely feral when something threatens our young. Any human parent will tell you there's nothing more dangerous than a human who thinks a child is in danger. We'll fight bears, run into burning buildings, and lift cars with our bare hands when the parental protection instinct kicks in. So naturally, the galaxy looked at all this evidence and came to the completely logical conclusion that humans are the ultimate protectors. If you want your offspring to survive literally anything, you give them to the species that treats mortal peril as a light cardio workout. My comm unit chirped, and Captain Vera Kowalski's face appeared on the screen, looking like she'd aged about 10 years in the last hour. Vera's the kind of officer who could stare down a black hole and make it blink first, but right now she looked like she was reconsidering her career choices. Rodriguez, please tell me you haven't accidentally started an interstellar incident yet, she said. Define yet, I replied, while gently pulling Squeaks out of the floor where she'd gotten her lower half stuck again. Also define accidentally. Vera pinched the bridge of her nose. The entire diplomatic corps just evacuated, leaving their children with you specifically. Do you understand what this means? That I should update my resume under unexpected skills. It means, Vera continued with the patience of someone explaining quantum physics to a goldfish, that every major galactic power has just demonstrated complete and total faith in humanity's protective capabilities. They trust us so much that they'd rather leave their most precious possessions with one confused Marine than take them into a potentially dangerous situation. I looked down at Razor, who was now trying to establish dominance over a potted plant. The plant was losing. But I don't know anything about alien children. That's not the point, Jake. They think you're so inherently dangerous that nothing in the universe would dare threaten something under your protection. You're like a walking insurance policy with opposable thumbs. That's ridiculous, I said, then immediately had to stop buttons from what appeared to be an attempt to reprogram the coffee machine using pure mathematics. I'm just a regular guy from Toledo. Jake, your hometown has an annual festival celebrating the time your ancestors fought a war over a boundary dispute that lasted 3 days and ended with everyone going out for drinks. Most species take decades to have a proper diplomatic disagreement. You people turned territorial conflict into a weekend social event. She had a point there. The Toledo War was pretty much peak human behavior. We got so worked up over a strip of land that we mobilized militias, then realized we'd rather just party and called the whole thing off. In retrospect, that probably did send some mixed signals to alien anthropologists. So let me get this straight, I said, watching Squeaks successfully phase through a wall only to immediately get her head stuck in a decorative vase on the other side. The entire galaxy thinks humans are so dangerous that we're the safest possible babysitters. Exactly. And Jake. Vera's expression shifted to something between sympathy and barely suppressed panic. Whatever you do, don't let them down. The last thing we need is for the galactic community to realize we're just really determined primates with anxiety issues and a caffeine addiction. The comm link cut out, leaving me alone with 3 alien children and the dawning realization that I was now responsible for maintaining humanity's reputation as the galaxy's apex protectors. No pressure at all. You know what they don't teach you in Space Marine training? Advanced Xenobiology Childcare. Turns out that's a pretty significant oversight when you're suddenly responsible for 3 alien children whose idea of playtime could legitimately be classified as weapons testing. It started innocently enough. I figured, how different could alien kids be from human kids? They probably want snacks, maybe some entertainment, and definitely need to avoid putting dangerous objects in their mouths. Standard babysitting protocol, right? Wrong. So very catastrophically wrong. Razor, the mini Vorthak, had apparently decided that the station's maintenance bots were the perfect prey for developing his hunting skills. Now I should mention that these bots are about the size of shopping carts and are specifically designed to handle emergency repairs in hostile environments. They're basically armored bulldozers with artificial intelligence. Razor was stalking them like a house cat stalking a laser pointer, except instead of a cute pounce, his version involved extending retractable claws that could probably cut through titanium and making these low rumbling sounds that I'm pretty sure translated to "I'm going to eat your circuits." "Razor buddy," I said, trying to sound authoritative while having absolutely no idea what I was doing, "maybe we don't hunt the repair bots. They're probably expensive." He looked at me with those bright yellow eyes that were way too intelligent for something that should still be asking for juice boxes, tilted his head, and then promptly ignored me to continue his mechanical safari. Meanwhile, Squeaks had discovered that her phasing abilities worked on pretty much everything except, apparently, the station's ventilation system. I kept hearing these distressed squeaking sounds coming from the walls, followed by the occasional thump as she tried to phase through air ducts and got herself wedged in there like a gelatinous cork. "Squeaks, you okay in there?" I called out to a nearby air vent. The response was a series of squeaks that I interpreted as either I'm fine or I've accidentally phased into the life support system and we're all going to die. Given my luck today, probably the latter. But the real problem was buttons. See, when Ambassador Quexmine said her daughter was working through advanced quantum mathematics for fun, I thought she meant like Sudoku puzzles or maybe some basic algebra. You know, kid stuff. What I didn't expect was for buttons to interface directly with the station's computer systems and start improving them. And by improving I mean completely rewriting the defense protocols while humming what sounded like a crystalline version of a lullaby. The first sign of trouble was when all the lights in the lounge started flashing in prime number sequences. Then the automated announcements began speaking in mathematical equations instead of actual languages. Finally, the doors started opening and closing in what I can only describe as a Fibonacci pattern. "Buttons, sweetie," I said, approaching the glowing crystalline child very carefully. "Maybe we could do some math that doesn't involve the station's computer systems." She looked up at me and projected a holographic equation that I'm pretty sure was calculating the probability of the entire station's systems becoming self-aware. The answer appeared to be approaching 47.3%. This was about the time I realized that traditional human parenting techniques were not going to cut it. You can't put a phase-shifting blob in timeout, you can't reason with a predator whose brain is hardwired for hunting, and you definitely can't take away screen time from a child who considers quantum computing to be recreational activity. I tried everything I could think of. I offered snacks mice, turns out Razor only eats live prey, Squeaks absorbs nutrients through some kind of osmosis process, and Buttons apparently photosynthesizes. I suggested quiet activities, which resulted in Razor practicing his quiet hunting, Squeaks quietly phasing through increasingly complex objects, and Buttons quietly calculating what appeared to be the structural weaknesses of the entire station. The breaking point came when Razor successfully cornered one of the maintenance bots and was preparing to pounce. Squeaks had somehow gotten herself stuck in 3 different air vents simultaneously, and Buttons had managed to make the coffee machines achieve sentience and start a union. That's when it hit me. I was thinking about this all wrong. I wasn't dealing with human children who needed to be managed and controlled. I was dealing with 3 young members of species that the galaxy considered dangerous enough that they trusted only humans to handle them. Maybe the trick wasn't to fight their nature. Maybe the trick was to embrace it. After all, humans were supposed to be the crazy ones, right? So here's the thing about being the galaxy's designated most dangerous species. Apparently it comes with certain expectations. And if 3 alien parents had enough faith in human insanity to leave their children with me, then maybe it was time to live up to that reputation. I stood there in the middle of the chaos, watching Razor stock maintenance equipment, listening to Squeaks squeaking plaintively from inside the walls, and observing Buttons turn the station's automated systems into what appeared to be a budding artificial intelligence collective, and I had what I can only describe as a moment of pure human clarity. These kids weren't misbehaving. They were doing exactly what their species were designed to do. Razor was a young predator learning to hunt. Squeaks was exploring her environment the way her people naturally did. And Buttons was solving problems through mathematics, because that's how quartzlings interact with the world. The problem wasn't them. The problem was me trying to make them act like human children instead of working with what they actually were. Time to get creative. "All right, Razor," I said, walking over to the young Vorthak who was preparing to pounce on a maintenance bot. "You want to hunt? Let's hunt." I activated my comm unit and accessed the station's holographic training systems. Within seconds I had a dozen holographic targets materializing around the lounge. Everything from small quick-moving energy signatures to larger, more challenging prey simulations. Razor's eyes went wide. And he made a sound that I'm choosing to interpret as best day ever. He immediately abandoned the maintenance bot, and started stalking the holographic prey with the focused intensity of a natural-born predator. "But here's the thing, buddy," I continued. "Real hunters don't just attack randomly. They study their prey, they plan their approach, and they make clean, efficient kills. Think you can handle advanced hunting techniques?" The way Razor's posture straightened up told me I'd hit the right note. Suddenly this wasn't just play myopus, this was education. I was teaching him to be a better predator, which in Vorthak culture was probably the highest form of respect you could show a young one. Next up was Squeaks. I could still hear her stuck in the ventilation system, but now I had an idea. "Hey Squeaks," I called out. "How would you like to explore the most complex 3-dimensional maze on the station?" I pulled up the station schematic and highlighted the entire vent system, mapping out different routes, challenges, and objectives. Instead of the ventilation system being an obstacle, it became an adventure course specifically designed for a phase-shifting explorer. "I'm going to give you missions," I announced to the nearest air vent. Find the hidden maintenance access points, map the emergency routes, and see if you can phase scout the entire station. Think of it as reconnaissance training. The excited squeaking that echoed through the walls told me I was on the right track. Suddenly Squeaks wasn't stuck. He was on a mission, and judging by the increasingly confident sounds coming from the vents, she was having the time of her life. That left Buttons, who was still making the station's computer systems achieve increasingly higher levels of consciousness. The coffee machines had apparently elected a spokesperson, and were demanding better working conditions. Buttons, I said, sitting down next to the glowing crystalline child. I've got a challenge for you. How would you like to improve systems that actually need improving? I pulled up diagnostics for the station's non-critical systems, things like entertainment networks, food replicators, and recreational facilities. Stuff that could be enhanced without risking everyone's lives. These systems are operating at maybe 60% efficiency, I explained, showing her the data. Think you could optimize them? Make them better without making them sentient? Buttons practically vibrated with excitement, her crystalline form shifting through different colors as she dove into the new challenge. Within minutes, she was deep into the recreational systems, optimizing everything from the holographic entertainment suites to the automated chess games. And here's the beautiful part. Other species were watching all of this through the security feeds. I could see the small indicator lights that meant the monitoring systems were active, which meant somewhere in the secure areas, alien parents and station personnel were observing the dangerous human in action. What they saw was a human who treated a young predator's hunting instincts as something to be trained and refined, not suppressed. They watched a human turn a phase-shifting child's natural curiosity into a structured exploration mission. They observed a human channel a young mathematician's problem-solving abilities into constructive improvements rather than chaotic experimentation. To them, this probably looked like exactly what they expected from humanity's most dangerous representative. Complete confidence in the face of chaos, the ability to weaponize any situation into a learning opportunity, and the kind of fearless approach to child rearing that only a species from a death world would attempt. In reality, I was just treating these kids the way human parents have always treated their children, by recognizing their individual strengths and finding ways to challenge them appropriately. But apparently, when you're dealing with species whose children have abilities that could level buildings, this approach looks absolutely insane. And it was working. Razor was learning advanced hunting techniques, and actually following instructions because he respected the training. Squeaks was mapping the entire station while having an absolute blast exploring. Buttons was improving systems left and right while staying within safe parameters, because she understood the boundaries of the challenge. For the first time since this whole situation started, I was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, I might actually survive babysitting the galaxy's most dangerous children. That's when the pirates showed up. You know how in action movies, there's always that moment when everything suddenly gets real. When the music stops, the lighting changes, and everyone realizes that playtime is officially over. Well, imagine that moment, except instead of being the ruggedly handsome hero with a predetermined script, you're a confused space marine from Toledo with 3 alien children, and absolutely no idea what you're doing. The station's emergency klaxons shifted from their routine evacuation tone to their "oh crap, we're all going to die" frequency. Through the massive viewport windows of the diplomatic lounge, I could see them, my 3 sleek, predatory ships that looked like someone had crossed a shark with a nightmare and then given it really big guns. "Attention Harmony Station," came a voice over the comm system that sounded like gravel mixed with bad intentions. "This is Captain Vex of the Crimson Talon. We're here for the diplomatic cargo you're carrying. Surrender now, and we might let some of you live to tell embarrassing stories about today." My comm unit chirped urgently, and Captain Kowalski's face appeared, looking like she'd aged another decade in the past hour. Behind her, I could see flashing lights and what appeared to be a very active combat situation. "Jake, listen to me very carefully," she said, ducking as something exploded in the background. "The pirates have disabled the main corridors between the secure zones and the diplomatic section. The alien parents are trapped on the other side of the station, and we can't get to you." "Define can't," I said, while simultaneously watching Razor's ears perk up at the sound of distant weapons fire. Apparently, young Vorthax could sense conflict from impressive distances. "I mean, the corridors are filled with armed pirates who are specifically looking for high-value diplomatic hostages," Vera replied. "And Jake, those 3 kids you're watching, they're not just any alien children. Razor is the heir to the Vorthak hunting clans. Squeaks is the daughter of the Zephyrian Trade Coalition's supreme navigator, and Buttons is the child of the Quartzling Computational Assembly's primary node." I felt my stomach drop somewhere around my boots. "So you're telling me I'm babysitting the galactic equivalent of royal children?" I'm telling you that you're currently protecting 3 of the most valuable hostages in known space, and there's a ship full of pirates heading your way, who would very much like to get their hands on them." The comm connection started breaking up as another explosion shook the station. "Jake, you need to keep those kids safe until we can fight our way through to you. Can you do that?" Before I could answer, the connection cut out, leaving me alone with 3 alien children, and the dawning realization that this wasn't a babysitting job anymore. This was a protection detail. I turned around to find all 3 kids, looking at me with expressions that were surprisingly serious for children who had been playing just moments before. Apparently, they understood the gravity of the situation better than I'd given them credit for. "All right, team," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "We've got unfriendly visitors coming, and your parents are stuck on the other side of the station. That means it's just us until the cavalry arrives." Razor made a low growling sound and extended his claws. Not in play this time. This was the real deal. Squeaks had stopped squeaking and was hovering near the wall, her gelatinous form shifting in a way that suggested she was ready to phase out of sight at a moment's notice. And Buttons was projecting holographic displays that showed the station's defensive capabilities, which, according to her calculations, were currently operating at about 12% effectiveness. The first pirate came through the main entrance about 30 seconds later. He was roughly humanoid, covered in what looked like makeshift armor, and carrying a weapon that was definitely not regulation. He took one look around the room, saw me standing there with 3 alien children, and started laughing. "Oh, this is perfect," he said, speaking into his comm unit. "Captain, you're not going to believe this. The high-value targets are being guarded by 1 human. This is going to be easier than stealing candy from a mice." That's when Razor pounced. I've seen nature documentaries about big cats taking down prey, but watching a young Vorthak in full hunter mode is something else entirely. Razor moved like liquid lightning, covering the distance between himself and the pirate in one fluid leap. The pirate's weapon went flying, and suddenly he was on the ground with about 60 pounds of very determined predator pinning him down. "Razor, hold," I commanded, using the same tone I'd used during his hunting training. To my amazement, he actually listened, keeping the pirate pinned but not doing any permanent damage. Meanwhile, Squeaks had phased through the floor and emerged behind 2 more pirates who were trying to flank us through the side entrance. The look of confusion on their faces when a gelatinous blob suddenly appeared behind them and started making threatening squeaking noises would have been hilarious under different circumstances. But the real surprise was Buttons. While her 2 companions were handling the physical threats, she had interfaced with the lounge's security systems, and was systematically locking down every entrance except the one we wanted the pirates to use, essentially funneling them into a kill zone where Razor could pick them off one by one. "Good teamwork," I called out, feeling more like a coach than a babysitter. "Squeaks, can you scout ahead and let us know how many more are coming? Buttons, see if you can access the station's internal sensors. Razor, nice work on the non-lethal takedown." The next few minutes were honestly a blur of controlled chaos. More pirates kept coming, but between Razor's hunting instincts, Squeak's reconnaissance abilities, and Button's tactical support, we were holding our own. I found myself coordinating their efforts, using their natural abilities in combination in ways that were devastatingly effective. It was like being part of the galaxy's most unusual special forces unit. Razor would take point, using his predator instincts to identify threats. Squeaks would phase scout ahead, gathering intelligence and setting up flanking maneuvers. Buttons would provide tactical analysis and electronic warfare support. And I was apparently the commanding officer of this impromptu child soldier unit. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, it was oddly exhilarating. By the time Captain Kowalski and her security team finally fought their way through to the diplomatic lounge, they found us sitting calmly in the middle of what looked like the aftermath of a small war. 12 pirates were secured with improvised restraints, their weapons were neatly stacked in the corner, and 3 alien children were looking extremely pleased with themselves. "Jake," Vera said, staring at the scene with something approaching awe, "what exactly happened here?" I looked down at Razor, who was sitting at attention like the galaxy's most lethal guard dog. At Squeaks, who was hovering proudly near her reconnaissance trophies. At Buttons, who was still displaying tactical readouts, like the universe's youngest military analyst. "We protected each other," I said simply. "Just like family." The aftermath of what I'm now calling the Great Diplomatic Daycare Defense was honestly more overwhelming than the actual fighting. Within minutes of the security team's arrival, the station was crawling with officials, medical personnel, and what appeared to be at least 3 different types of interstellar media crews, who had somehow gotten word that something unprecedented had happened on Harmony Station. But before any of that chaos could reach us, the real reunion happened. Ambassador HFY was the first parent through the door, moving with that peculiar combination of grace and barely controlled terror that only a parent rushing toward their child can achieve. When she saw Razor sitting calmly next to a pile of unconscious pirates, her antennae actually drooped with what I'm choosing to interpret as relief. "My little hunter," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that didn't translate through the universal translator, but somehow conveyed pure parental emotion. "Are you hurt? Are you well?" Razor bounded over to his mother and made a series of chirping sounds that I'd learned meant excitement mixed with pride. From what I could piece together of their rapid conversation, he was giving her a detailed breakdown of his first real hunt, complete with tactical analysis and performance metrics. Ambassador Voltar flowed through the doorway next, her gelatinous form rippling with what I was beginning to recognize as Zephyrian anxiety patterns. "Squeaks, my precious explorer, where are you?" Squeaks materialized out of the nearest wall, squeaking excitedly as she bounced toward her parent. The reunion involved what appeared to be some kind of harmonic resonance between their forms that made the air shimmer with barely visible energy patterns. Beautiful. Actually, if you ignored the fact that it was probably rearranging molecules in the immediate vicinity. Ambassador Quexmine entered with her characteristic wind chime footsteps, and Buttons immediately projected a holographic display that looked like a combination of a mission report and a mathematical proof of her own awesomeness. The 2 quartzlings began communicating in rapid-fire equations that made my head hurt just to look at. "Commander Rodriguez," Ambassador HFY said, turning toward me with an expression that somehow managed to convey gratitude despite being on a face that could generously be described as built for terrifying prey animals. "I understand that you coordinated my son's first successful hunt." "Well," I said, suddenly feeling awkward, "he did most of the actual hunting. I just pointed him in the right direction." "You taught him to hunt strategically rather than instinctively," she continued. "You showed him how to work as part of a pack. These are advanced concepts that most Vorthak younglings don't master until their 3rd molting cycle." Ambassador Voltar's form shifted to what I was learning indicated agreement. "Squeaks has mapped the entire station's infrastructure and identified 17 previously unknown security vulnerabilities. Her spatial reasoning skills have improved dramatically in just a few hours. And Buttons," added Ambassador Quexmine, "has successfully interfaced with 12 different computer systems without causing a single cascade failure. Her operational parameters have expanded by 47%. I looked down at the 3 kids, who were all looking back at me with expressions that somehow managed to be both proud and expectant. Like they were waiting for me to say something profound about our shared experience. "They're good kids," I said finally. "Really good kids. They just needed someone to believe they could handle the real stuff." That's when Captain Kowalski pulled me aside, her expression somewhere between amazement and concern. "Jake, do you realize what you've done here?" she asked quietly. "Survived babysitting," I suggested. "You've just demonstrated tactical coordination with 3 different species military-age offspring, turned them into an effective combat unit, and successfully defended a strategic position against superior numbers." She gestured toward the pile of captured pirates. "The Galactic community isn't just going to see this as successful childcare. They're going to see this as proof that humans can weaponize literally anything, including other species' children." I thought about that for a moment. Is that a bad thing? "Jake, you've probably just guaranteed that every time there's a galactic crisis involving young aliens, someone's going to call for human intervention. You've turned babysitting into a military specialty." As if to prove her point, my comm unit started beeping with incoming messages. A lot of incoming messages. I scrolled through them quickly. News requests for consultation on juvenile protection protocols, inquiries about human-supervised youth development programs, and what appeared to be at least 3 different job offers for interspecies childhood development specialist positions. "Oh no," I said, watching the messages pile up. "This is going to become a thing, isn't it?" "Jake," Vera said with the kind of smile that meant I was definitely not going to like what came next. "I've got some news. Command has decided that your performance today demonstrates a unique skill set that could be valuable for diplomatic relations. Please tell me you're not saying what I think you're saying." "Congratulations, Commander Rodriguez. You've just been promoted to Chief Liaison for Interspecies Youth Protection Services." I looked around the room at the 3 alien children who had somehow become my responsibility, their proud parents, the pile of defeated pirates, and the growing crowd of officials who were all looking at me like I'd just solved some kind of cosmic puzzle. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. The galaxy thinks humans are so dangerous that we're the perfect babysitters. I accidentally proved them right by turning 3 alien kids into a special forces unit. And now my job is officially to be the guy who watches other people's children during interstellar crises. That's about the size of it, Vera confirmed. I felt a gentle tug on my sleeve and looked down to see buttons projecting a small holographic message that simply read, "Thank you for believing in us." Razor made a soft chirping sound that I'd learned meant contentment, and Squeaks bounced over to hover near my shoulder in what appeared to be a Zephyrian gesture of affection. "You know what?" I said, looking around at my strange new family. "I can think of worse ways to make a living. After all, if the galaxy wanted to believe that humans were crazy enough to turn childcare into a military operation, who was I to disappoint them? Besides, these kids had proven today that they were capable of amazing things when someone actually trusted them to be amazing. And if maintaining humanity's reputation as the galaxy's most inexplicably effective protectors meant spending my time helping young aliens discover their potential while keeping them safe, well, there were definitely worse ways to serve. Even if it did mean updating my business cards to read Commander Jake Rodriguez, professional alien babysitter and galactic defense specialist. The universe, I was beginning to realize, had a very twisted sense of humor. But at least the pay was probably going to be excellent.